look, this is a really great opportunity to catch up. As you guys suggested, you were happy to invite a guest speaker along, similar to what we did at the start of the year. So we've been really fortunate that Adam and Jac can join us today to just share their story and have a bit of a yarn, really. So it's not a high pressure lunchtime catch up today, really just a bit of a chat, chance to catch up and, introduce yourself. So I've allowed about 90 minutes, but we might not need that much time. Just depends how many questions you've got. And if we run out of steam and we finish a bit early, that's okay. So I thought we could start by just doing a bit of a around the room introduction of really to Jac and Adam, but it's a good refresher for us as well. So your name, where you are, and your enterprise. And so I can I'm going to call out your name so it's not, everyone bumping off over everyone. But yeah, I'm Sarah. I work for AgVic. I'm based in Benalla in northeast Victoria. And I have a very, I'm loving hobby farming. We've got black-faced Suffolks who are lambing, and this year's lamb is going much better than last year. So I've only got 2 on the bottle at the moment, which is creating a bit of fun, and it's been great for the kids while they've been home to have a special job. So that's me, but I might just hand over to Gemma to introduce herself.
Yeah, sure.
As well.
I think, yeah, I am Gemma. I am also with AgVic, so I'm kind of Sarah's counterpart in the ag policy section of Agriculture Victoria. So yeah, one of the things I look after is the Young Farmers Advisory Council, which will sort of help to provide a bit of advice to the minister and to the department and government on issues affecting young farmers. So that's a pretty cool thing that I get to champion. Yeah, and so thanks very much for your time today, Adam and Jac. It was great to speak to you on the phone the other day, and we do really appreciate you giving your time today to chat to these guys.
Thanks, Gemma. So Evie, can you unmute and introduce yourself, please?
Hey Sarah, I'll just have to be really quick. I'm Eve Quahampton. We've got a beef grazing operation in the Upper Murray, sort of up near Walwa, Corryong area.
Perfect. Thank you. Great job. I'll scoot down to Jamie.
Yeah, hi guys. Jamie Pepper, Southwest Victoria near Hamilton. Beef, cattle, I've got both Angus and Hereford. First cross ewes, merino ewes, and a small Pole Dorset stud.
Ticking lots of boxes there, Jamie. Well done. Thank you. Joel, how are you getting on?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just in the toilet at the moment. Joel, I'm at the Wicker region of Victoria, just a cropping farm. I'm off a family farm with sheep and cropping. At the moment, managing the farm for it to build. So, I've always sort of been around the Wicker region.
Super. Thanks, Joel, for that. Good job. I like the multitasking that's happening there. Doing a good job. Natasha.
Hi, sorry I'm a bit late. I got stuck on a call. My name's Natasha Lobban. I'm from Eldorado, which is about halfway between Wangaratta and Beechworth. We've got mostly Angus breeding cattle here, and also some trade lambs and some crops.
Perfect. Thank you. And Nick.
G'day. So Nick Blandford, run a self-replacing merino flock down in East Gippsland, sort of, yeah, over on the edge of Victoria there. And yeah, so I work with my dad and uncle, and we run about 3,000 ewes normally on about 3,500 acres.
Thanks, Nick. And Sammy.
Sorry, was that me?
Yeah.
My internet's cutting in and out a bit, sorry. I'm Sam Mitchell. I'm from the Mallee between Sea Lake and Birtrip, if anyone knows that. And we're 80% broad cropping and 20% roughly merino ewes. And yeah, it's just me and, well, Dad's semi-retired, so yeah, it's just me.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Have I missed any of our mentees? Everyone said hello. I don't want to miss anyone before handing over. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for that, guys. Hopefully that's helped Adam and Jack get a bit of an overview of who's in the room. We are also expecting Libby Patton, who is from Northeast Victoria, as well. So if we see her pop in. So yeah, thank you. So I'd like to hand over to Adam and Jack to introduce themselves and share their story. And I guess it's up to them whether they want questions as they go, whatever sort of suits you guys. I'm happy to be guided by them. I'll make you a co-host so you can.
All right. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, you guys are perfect. Well done. Yep.
Sometimes it's pretty hit and miss, but thanks for inviting us today. And we were both pretty excited to be on because, well, I've certainly got a lot of connections to Victoria. Well, when I was very young, I grew up in Melbourne before we moved to Tassie, and I got cousins out at Lake Bolac, and I went back to Marcus Oldham for a few years. So I've got plenty of friends in Vic and sort of know the lay of the land pretty well. So I was pretty excited to get the invite. But yeah, I'm Adam Coffey. This is my wife.
Hi,
hello.
Jack, Jacinta.
Thanks.
And we're obviously up near Miriamvale, which is sort of halfway between Bundaberg and Rockhampton on the sort of central Queensland coast. And I'd sort of like today to be pretty interactive if we can. But we do have a little presentation that we actually did at as part of Beef Week in Rockhampton in May. We were asked to do a coffee tour, and we weren't quite sure why, but apparently people were interested in our story. So we put together this presentation, and we went through it the other day and sort of chopped it a little bit, but we thought it was probably a pretty good way to get to kick things off here, and it'll give you a bit of an understanding of who we are and where we've come from. So that'll be what, 15, 20 minutes or so. We might dive into that.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, guys. So
share.
you good? You should be able to.
Just see if you can see our screen.
You want to share? Does that work?
That's coming. Yes.
Coming.
Nailed it, guys.
It's
You're awesome.
really,
Well
it's really
done.
mainly just a bunch of photos, but we'll scroll through it and yeah, it'll give you some.
So you got something else to look at this afternoon.
Perfect.
So obviously we'll talk about a little bit about ourselves. We're going to talk about the property we're on now, which is called Bareelam, which has been quite a big renovation job. We were first generation in the industry, which we don't tend to use too often. Generational sort of issues are not really that relevant in the scheme of things, but we do sort of talk about it a little bit in the current framework around environmental sustainability. And when we're asked to talk to industry, we sort of use it as a good example that we're in the industry because we want to be, we chose to be. We don't really have any sort of generational commitment there. And a big way in which we operate, I suppose, is in line with the current current themes around environment, sustainability. It's all carbon, it's all happening in that space. So we're sort of trying to operate in that fashion a little bit. I'll hand over to Jack. We'll just chop and change a little bit. And if anyone's got any questions along the way, please feel free to butt in or write them down when we finish. But yeah, 15, 20 minutes and we'll be done.
So our next one is, there we go. So this is our vision. To clarify where we're headed, and we developed this vision in 2008 with a lot of help from a lot of other people. It's a really, really hard thing to do. You've got to kind of dig deep personally and look at your goals and generally drag your other half kicking and screaming to help you with it. But anyway, this is ours. It's pretty personal, but I'm just going to read it out to you. So it says, we're grateful for our family, friends, each other and what we have in our life. We're happy, healthy and motivated daily to succeed. Our children are loved, happy, valued, well adjusted, and we have a good work-life balance and spend time with the boys doing activities we all enjoy. We're still kind of working on that work-life balance. It's not quite there yet. It's a vision, yeah. We're able to assist them wherever we can to ensure they become the best versions of themselves they can be. Our business is a positive and enjoyable part of our life, enabling us to work together and support each other in our endeavours. We are committed to ensuring ongoing improvement in agriculture. We are ambitious, open-minded and willing to positively tackle new challenges and push the boundaries in all we do to ensure we are living a fulfilled and exciting life. So we put this, we've printed it out and stuck it on the wall, and it's just something we look back at every now and then and just make sure that we're sort of on track with and what we're doing aligns with our vision. Having said that, we're still pretty sort of free and easy with what we do. It's more of a guideline, I guess. We're not overly strict. We've always had goals, I suppose, but not really ever done it as a formal process. And when we moved down here, we were really fortunate from the territory. We were fortunate enough to be selected for Project Pioneer, which is a federally funded reef project for Barrier Reef. And what this did was enable us to attend, I don't know if you've heard of RCS, that Resource Consulting Services facilitated the project. So I think it was worth about $50,000 over 3 years, and they put us through each one of RCS's courses. So we did Grazing for Profit, Next Steps, Executive Link Program, and all of these really showed discipline and streamlining financial procedures. And we're very lucky to have had that when we were trying to set up this property, so we can sort of start from scratch and work from there. So going right back to the beginning, we grew up in Tassie via, Adam was born in Canada and then a bit in Victoria and then ended up in Tassie, so that's how we met. We both actually did Pony Club and evented, show jumping, mountain games, all the things. I actually went to university, did a Bachelor of Commerce and was working as an auditor and then assistant accountant for what is now Rural Co. And Adam, being not so keen on education, left school early and headed off jackarooing, went through New South and headed off doing those sorts of things. I think until he sort of realised he needed a bit of paper if he was going to do what he really loved to do. So that's when he went back to Marcus and got his piece of paper. I guess at that point, we decided to leave Tassie and our plan was to do a lap of Australia, work our way around and just have a bit of fun. I think we only made it as far as Catchup in southern WA. We drove straight there because we had friends there and we got a job, and basically the rest is history. We managed that place. It was a sheep and cropping property. Then the company was getting out of sheep and they sold that property. So they said, well, we've got this place in the Kimberley and the head stockman's just snatched it and we've got 40,000 head to muster, and what do you reckon? And so we faked it till we made it, and we said, right, no worries. So we headed to Kimberley and had a fantastic few years up there, nearly 4 years, I think, in Kimberley, and another stint in Longreach managing a place, and then back up to the territory. So yeah, that was sort of our bit of a corporate management, I guess, that part of our careers.
That's amazing. So I think as Jack touched on, we're in corporate sort of ag management, and I guess really that was the career for us because we didn't come from a farming background. We didn't really have a lot of capital, and it was a pretty good gig. You paid well, and we were living a pretty good life on some of these big stations. So the last sort of corporate job we had was managing a couple of floodplain properties, Labelle and Welltree, for what was then R.M. Williams Ag Holdings. They went, despite having a lot of promise, they went into receivership about a year after we were there, and so we sort of needed a place to be. And a long story short was that during the time we were at Labelle, I'd purchased a lot of cattle, young feeder cattle, to put on the floodplain. And one person I purchased them from was Henry Townsend. Now, Henry and his family grew up on Labelle, so they moved out from Florida and basically were there for generations. And at the time, I'd asked Henry to come up and so I could pick his brains about Labelle and Welltree, being floodplain properties that are pretty complex to manage, and I really was sort of seeking his input. Henry had a property down west of Catherine. It's about 250,000 odd acres, I suppose. He subdivided it, so it was relatively small for the area. And again, so when we left Labelle, Henry had to go. They were going overseas for 6 or 8 weeks, and they basically said, "Look, you need a place to be, and we need someone to look after the joint. So why don't you come down? And if you're still here when we return, then we'll talk." So that was the start of what was a almost 4-year stint there, with a really good relationship with the Townsends. It was a relationship that ultimately developed into a profit share agreement. So the Townsend moved to Brisbane and left us to our own device. Henry still had about 1,000 head of cattle there. We knocked the hay paddocks back into shape, started growing some hay, and we set up some some wet season adjustment deals with one of the big corporates up there. So basically, Henry had said to us, "If you want the place, if you want to earn any money, then and pay yourself a salary, then you have to make the money, and any profit is split down the middle." Around the same time, we purchased a lot of cattle. It was 2011, so the live export ban had hit. We'd managed to save over the years, and we bought and sold a couple of small houses back near Hobart. So that had sort of given us a bit of capital to get started. And we bought, we bought a lot of cattle on the back of the export ban, and we were sort of buying, cow-calf units for $350, and it was, the cattle export ban obviously caused a lot of pain, but for us, it was really the opportunity. And we look back on it now and think, geez, that was good management. It was really probably more luck. We just jagged it, but I think it was probably, maybe positioning ourselves for luck a little bit too. So we always wanted to obviously have our own block. We tried to lease Stapleton. We soon put the numbers around that, and soon figured that it was not going to happen. We didn't have enough capital to purchase. So Stapleton eventually sold, which we always knew was probably going to happen. We moved our cattle to a property next door. We picked them up and walked them 30k next door and put them on adjustment there. But the deal was that we had to, the guy who's had the place, an elderly gentleman, didn't want anything to do with them. So he said, you put them here and pay me to look after them. So we were tied to those cattle. And at that stage, I think last year we were there, we joined best part of 800 females. So we had a bit of a herd built up by then. So we were attached to these cattle, and we thought, what do we do now? So we bought a caravan and parked it at a friend's place at the old meatworks in Catherine, and really, I guess we were in limbo a little bit, but we recognised that we built, the cattle market was coming back. We built a good capital asset in these cattle, so it was really about what we do from there. I don't know. Well, I'll touch briefly on the mentoring program, because that was at that time that I entered it. So Beef Australia offered they started up a program in the name of Graham Acton, who had passed away and was a pretty famous cattleman up this way. And it was essentially what you guys are doing here. It was a mentoring program where we were coupled with mentors, and it went for 18 months, I think. So it was at that time I went into that. We flew down to Brisbane. We had face-to-faces before all this COVID drama, and I'll talk more about the program itself, because I think it's pretty relevant to what you guys are doing, but we'll just go on with our story a little bit here. At the same time, I applied for an upfield scholarship too, just for a laugh. So that one, we'll talk more about that too.
So that's our caravan there. We lived in that for just under 2 years in the end, with 2 small children. that was fun. We probably grateful for the warm weather in the territories. It meant we could be outside most of the time. So at this point we had 2 kids, a caravan, a lot of cows, and we didn't really know what else to do at that point. So we had some family friends who wanted to retire. We're in Queensland. They wanted out of the property, and their children were grown and had their own careers, and they weren't interested. So they came to us and they said, "We know you want your own place, and we want to retire. So what if we offered you a really great deal and see if we can get that across the line?" So unfortunately, it was really, really hard to get the banks on board. We were going in on really, really good equity, but the banks they didn't want to see it that way. They wanted to have a valuation, and we had great equity, but we were going to even bring our cattle down as well. So anyway, it was a 12-month process for us to get that across the line. In the meantime, Adam had applied and got the Nuffield scholarship, so he actually left and went to Ireland for his first part of the Nuffield scholarship for that. So he was away in Ireland, and I got a phone call from those family friends and said that they had someone had come in last minute and offered them a lot more money, and they were going to take the deal. So after 12 months, the whole thing fell over and we were back to square one. So that was pretty tough. Yeah, it was a pretty low point, and we purposely not gone and got another job for those 12 months so we could focus purely on the cattle and purely on getting this deal across the line. So that was the end of that. So Adam came home. I couldn't actually tell him because he was in Ireland and I couldn't speak to him, so I actually sent him an email. Fairly certain he had a few Guinnesses that night at some pub in Ireland. But anyway, he came home and we felt sorry for ourselves for a couple of days, and we phoned Philip, who was Adam's mentor from that Beef Connections program, who lives in Queensland, and he basically said, "Is this what you want to do? Then don't sit around feeling sorry for yourselves. You got to, basically give yourself, you got to kick up the bum and said, if this is what you want, you've got to go get it." So we looked at a bunch of properties in Queensland that we thought might suit. Adam got in the car and he drove about 9,000 kilometres in 6 days, did a lap of Queensland and looked at all these properties that we had on the list. So high on the list was not purchasing anybody else's improvements. Couldn't afford that and had to have development potential. So he would ring me every night and tell me the pros and cons of the properties he looked at. And then he phoned me after looking at this place and he said, "I think I found it." And I was pretty excited because I knew there was a house on this one. And I asked about it and I said, "How many bedrooms did it have?" And he said, "Oh, well, I didn't really want to go inside because I wasn't sure if it would fall down." So I said, "Right, we'll be in the van for a little bit longer." And unfortunately, yeah, that was the case. We were in the van for a little bit longer. So anyway, we found our broker who had helped us with the previous deal that didn't work. And obviously he had got nothing out of that deal because it didn't get across the line. So he said he would help us get this deal across the line.
So yeah, we were moving, and it was amazing. I always laugh because when we first moved over to Western Australia after I finished Marcus, we had a couple of kelpies and what fit from the canopy on the back of the ute. And then when we moved from there to the Kimberley, we had that plus a horse boat. And then when we moved to Longreach, we had removalists. And then, so anyway, long story short, here we are moving across here. We had a road train with trucks and sea containers and another bloody cattle truck in the van. And yeah,
all the things.
I don't know how it happened, but it does. So yeah, the trip down was a bit of a travelling circus, and we got a few photos there. My parents came along to be steering wheel attendants purely because you had so many vehicles to drive. But it's a good point in that, both of our parents have always been very supportive of what we've done, and they, we often, whenever we talk about our journey to people, sometimes we forget to talk about them, and that's probably because it goes without saying that, the support they've given us over the years, we couldn't have done it without them. So always there.
There's my beautiful house.
So where are we up to here? Oh yeah. So that obviously that was the house. It was pretty wild. It's and the day that we drove up, that we got early occupancy because I had to take off on the Global Focus program for Nuffield, so that was 8 weeks overseas. But we managed to get an early occupancy in the contract, so we came here a few weeks before settlement, and I drove the truck in early because I had to meet the ergon guy to hook up the pole. And I tell you what, waiting there for 2 hours for Jack to drive up the driveway and see the look on her face was one of the most nerve-wracking times of my life. But she did get out with a smile or a grimace or something. I don't know. But so I was there for less than 10 days, and then I got her a flushing toilet and some water, and I left. So I thought, what more could a woman want? And I was out of there overseas for 8 weeks. So yeah, again, and I should talk briefly about Nuffield. You guys are obviously would be pretty well aware of it. I don't know if we've got any scholars here or anyone that's done anything with them, but yeah, the GFP was a fantastic trip. We met in Singapore, we went to Qatar, India, Turkey, France, the US, and you know, you end up in some weird and wacky parts of the world. I did another 8 weeks travel later on in the year to Uruguay, Brazil, and again back to the US, which was just fantastic. And my study topic probably evolved over time. I didn't really have one going in, but it really centered around intensifying your operations on these larger rangeland type places, which is where we were at the time in the NT, rather than just buying the next door neighbour or buying another property. A lot of what I saw overseas was more, you know, we don't have the population pressure that these countries have, so we just tend to spread ourselves out and get more capital, and we're sadly in the real estate game. But so mine was about maximising production in it. I guess Nuffield wanted to put the word holistic in my report, I think, in the title, but I sort of shied away from that. But in essence, that's what it was about. So we renovated the house. We were pretty keen to get out of that van, so it was a Bunnings renovation. So after we had somewhere to live sorted, we moved on to the property development. So Bareilles is 2,500 hectares. It had a bit over 400 hectares of timber plantation. We bought from receivers, so the timber plantation had been poorly managed. The species of tree was a Eucalyptus dunnii, which was really just a sterile sort of a hybrid bred specifically to be chipped. So whilst it was a hardwood, it was really not a hardwood in the true sense, you know, like the globulus that you guys have down there. It was garbage. So we thought we'd find some value in it. Unfortunately, we didn't, so it was a liability. And that's why these places sold for well below market value. This is one of 22 properties in the area, which were essentially some of the best beef cattle properties around, but they then planted out the trees. So we thought we could deal with the trees. We didn't really have the money to do anything with them straight away, so we thought we'd just put up with them. But it soon became apparent that they were really closing over. The canopy was closing over. It was limiting our grass production. There was a big woody weed issue throughout them. So we went back to the bank and borrowed some more money, like we like to do, and got some contractors in to chain it. So we chained it all to the ground and then started raking. We started that with a dry hire machine, and then we eventually bought our own dozer, for better or worse, and it's proved to be a good investment over time. So we're nearly out the back end of that now. We've got all our paddocks back, and there's still a bit of timber to tidy up, but we're sort of fully back into the production mode. Fencing and subdivision was the next job. So I think we had 4 paddocks. Last count, there were about 30 paddocks. Most of that's just a single hot wire. We're not cell grazing yet. It's probably, you know, we think we probably don't want to cell graze, but it sort of gets a bit addictive, this paddock subdivision, when you can see the results of getting in the grass. So yeah, we keep subdividing, so we're probably going to end up that way. But so yeah, we've gone from 4 to about 30 paddocks. We put in a lot of water infrastructure. We've had probably 3 of the worst years on record here on the coast. Remembering that we're in an 1100 mil average, so it's pretty pushy to the country. But rolling rainfall, our 12-month rolling has been around 400 or 500 mil a lot of times throughout the last few years, and we're still dry. We've had some good winter rain, but it's we are lacking any sort of runoff or recharge rain. So traditionally, all this country would rely on surface water because we're moving big, 1 or 2 big mobs around. We needed good water infrastructure, so we put down 6 bores, and we've just finished equipping them with solar and just starting to get some remote telemetry on them. In the process we changed banks. So we did the deal on the place with Commonwealth, who we'd always done our personal banking with, and we can talk about specific banks all day. It's not really important, but we really wanted somebody to deal with, a person to deal with, and that's what we found we were lacking with CBA. So anyway, we're now with NAB locally, and we've got a very good local banker if she's just on the end of the phone whenever we need it. And I think, you know, when we look at this, we've gone back to them a couple of times in the last few years to borrow more money to buy cattle, and we've never been knocked back. And you know, she sort of said, look, the financial literacy that I guess we gained through training and, you know, we invest in that training has really paid off in that regard, because we haven't once, you know, we go with the thorough business plan, we're always across our budget, you know, so we've managed to keep growing our business that way. And we sort of take the view that money's cheap at the moment, so if they'll lend it to us, then we'll borrow it.
So these are some of the people that have helped us along the way. Obviously, we've relied heavily on support, you know, along this whole way. It's not just the two of us, and we've got a really great network now of professional people, mentors, and of course our parents as well, who we still get along to look after the kids, so we can go off and learn other things and attend conferences and when COVID permits. So Project Pioneer was the one I mentioned before, RCS. They've really helped. I had my accounting background, so I sort of had that sort of side of it anyway, but it's sort of put into perspective, really making sure that we run it as a business. So yes, it's a family business and they're just the two of us, but we still have meetings. We meet at the meetings. We don't have them all the time. We might have them monthly or every 2 or 3 months, but we're always talking about, you know, daily what's going on. But once a month we try and sit down and actually go through every step of where we're at and what everything's looking like, and making sure sort of we're on the same page. Adam mentioned NAB support. We also got a new accountant who saved us a ton of money of things we had no idea about through property purchase, and just paid for themselves 10 times over. And then mentors, so both formal and informal, just been a huge support and sounding board across this whole process, and a big reality check, I guess, when we needed one.
So as I said, we're into grass production, and it wouldn't be any strange concept to you guys down there. And really, I guess what we're trying to do is model this place on a more southern farming system, which is not really all that common up here. So we're renovating our pastures. We bought a disc drill, and we're renovating paddocks. We're also experimenting with a lot of sort of cool season temperate plants. So we're putting, you know, multi-species mixes and turnips and chicory and ryegrass and oats and vetch and all these things, which is a bit wacky in this environment, but it's fun, and it's hopefully what we're trying to do, I guess, is build more resilience into our business and ideally iron out our winter feed gap. When we get cold and we frost, we lose a lot of pasture productivity. So we're trying to get some other things in the mix and also replicate probably what this country was like in its native state before a lot of it was cleared. If we go into our native range country, we look at, you know, forwards and legumes and different plants that will sort of be active at different times of the year. And really, in a lot of ways, what we've done here is, not us personally, but people in general, you know, we cleared country and we put in a tropically dominant sort of monoculture, and it's, I think, to our detriment. So we're trying to address that. We signed on to a soil carbon project. So core sampling is hopefully going to be done next week. And this is under the Queensland Government's Land Restoration Fund and the Federal Government's Emissions Reductions Fund. Essentially locking in a 20-year project here where we lock in a budgeted price with the government and with what is essentially a 1% increase over that time, which we think is quite conservative. We know we're coming off a low base. So it's potentially another really good additional income stream, but more importantly, it's not our primary focus. We're in the grass and cattle game, but we do recognise if we can put more organic matter back into our soil, build our soil carbon, then it's going to boost our production. So it's a bit of a no-brainer for us. And if someone wants to pay us along the way, then happy days. We're pretty involved. We're wrapping up here, guys. I hope we're not running out of time, but we're pretty involved in advocacy in the industry, and I don't think not quite. It was probably evolved over time. It's not like we went out and said we need to have our say, but I guess we came to the conclusion that if we had opinions on how things should or shouldn't be, and particularly around the environment production, sustainability, there's that word again, then we we felt that you got to be in it to win it. So yeah, I've been involved with Cattle Council on consultative committees. I'm now a cattle director on the Ag Force Cattle Board. Jac's in the Central Queensland Ag Force Council. So these are all, this is obviously our main state farming organisation that gives us avenue to things like the Australian Beef Sustainability Framework and lots of areas where we can, I think, I don't know how much influence we have at the end of the day, but it keeps us in the loop, and has certainly paid dividends for personally for us and our business in terms of networks. And so I guess that's why that's pretty important to us. So just to wrap up, I guess the lessons that we've learned, and yeah, we, like I said earlier, we get pretty humble when people want to come to us for advice, because I feel like we're just bumbling through it half the time ourselves. But we're always learning. But when we wrote this presentation, we thought, well, what are the key things that go along the way? And they are to be prepared for opportunity when it comes along. And there is luck. Sometimes there's luck, but I think if you're prepared, then you can leverage that a lot better. It doesn't have to look, things don't have to look exactly as you think it should. So you might have some vision for exactly what you're trying to invest in, or the capital that you're trying to grow, and you've got to be flexible. So we've purchased our own cattle, we've leased cattle, we've had profit share agreements, we've registered, we've dabbled in all different types of cattle and class, and down the track we probably need to, well, we're certainly always looking at diversifying our enterprise, which I think will be a natural progression. Keep knocking on doors, or as Jac calls it, annoying people. I'm pretty good at annoying people, and it's amazing how much help and support there is in ag. If you ask, people want to help you. So I never really understand when people want to go through a process and they keep it themselves and they bumble their way through it and probably make 10 more mistakes than they needed to if they just ask for help and support. And be prepared to take a risk. You got to be realistic, but don't be afraid to take a risk and back yourself, or we wouldn't have got anywhere. We wouldn't have got half the place we've been unless we've been prepared to stick our neck out. And at the end of the day, when we look at something, we say, well, what is the worst case scenario? I mean, we're optimists, so we always look at the best case scenario, but we say, if the worst case scenario eventuates in this situation, can we live with it? Yep, do it.
Jump in. So surround yourself with good people, and create networks wherever you go. So, that day for Beef Week was a great example. We had Phil Tickle there from SIBO Labs, so he does satellite monitoring of pasture density, and he's got this great technology of, telling you how much of your grass is photosynthesized at any time, how many kilos per hectare you're growing at any time. I met him, I sat next to him at a dinner at a red meat function in Canberra once. And the speaker we were listening to was really boring. And so we got chatting, and that's, and then now 3 years later, he's at our property speaking, and he's launching this fantastic new business of his. And so you just never know who you're going to meet and when. Use professionals, and don't be scared to pay for that advice. We kind of laugh at this one because we've also had lots of people who've come along and helped us, and we haven't necessarily paid them, but it doesn't have to be cash. We've helped people out where we can by bringing them along and letting them speak, like at the property tour, and giving them exposure, and so it works both ways to really make sure that you support the people who are helping you as well. Forgive your failures and learn from them and move on. So you can only make a decision with the best information you've got at the time. So you've really got to be a little bit kind to yourself, and we've made plenty of wrong moves, but we made them to the best, with the knowledge that we had at the time. So that's what we've said. Like Adam said, if we're truly comfortable with the worst case scenario, then we sort of just jump in with both feet.
Did I steal your bit there? I'm sorry. So that's about wraps it up for us, really. And I'd be keen probably to talk more specifically about my mentoring experience, because I'm now back on that. So that was the inaugural Beef Australia program, and they've run it. This is the third one, and myself and one of the other inaugural mentees are now back on mentoring, which I think I'm learning more out of than I did as a mentee. So I'm keen to talk more about that, but I'll probably just go over to you guys and see if you've got any questions at this stage.
Yeah, cool. Super duper. Oh gosh. Thanks so much, guys. That time has just flown. Thanks so much for such an engaging chat. But jump in, guys. Fire away.
I'll go first, Sarah. I have to say that we're almost sitting here listening to agricultural royalty. And not only that, they're also Twitter royalty. Now, I follow both of these people on Twitter. And I have to say that the way, particularly Adam, the way you use Twitter and your Facebook page as well is really like it channels such positive energy for our industry, and you're so good at actually getting the message out there, the positive life affirming message of our industry that sort of drowns out a lot of the crap that can actually come our way also via social media. And I think you spoke before about advocacy and what you do in your small way. And I think I did a little bit of research last night, and I understand that you used Twitter earlier this year to call out Coles for publishing misleading information about beef. And that led to AgForce, which you said you're on the board of, and Coles executives meeting and then a retraction from Coles. So I think that's quite an achievement on your part, and I think that's great.
Thanks, Jamie. I've still been waiting for the Coles assassins to come and take me out in the middle of the night. They weren't happy. While they retracted a few things, they weren't real happy. But it's a fine line, isn't it, between sort of being outspoken and creating enemies online, on social media. It's a rabbit hole, but it is what you make it. And I think it is within our industry, it's critical that we all feel the confidence to call bullshit when we see it, for want of a better term. I was a sort of bloke that didn't want a mobile phone when they first came out, and I never thought I'd be on social media, and it's really weird. And the reason I am is because when I did the Nuffield, they said you need to have a social media profile. It's part of your obligation to Nuffield, to your sponsor, to share your story. And I said, no, I really don't. Not. It's too bad to have one. So I sort of went, oh, well, everyone's on Facebook, and I don't know what any of these other ones are. Twitter, we'll give that a go, because I knew it was character limited, which suits my attention span. But and the ag stuff on Twitter is amazing, as you know, Tony. I travel the world on it. So Nuffield has a big network that you can tap into. They've got a fantastic program. If you go into a certain country, you click on what you want to see, and it'll come up with all these contacts. I did none of that, and they weren't really happy with it. But I put out a tweet, and I ended up in Brazil, in Mato Grosso in Brazil for a week with a guy called Eduardo Prado, who had a cousin who said, yeah, my cousin will look after you. And Jack sort of said, make sure they know we don't have any money, because I don't know how this is going to go. I spent a week there with that guy. We would have done 3,000 or 4,000 kilometres. He was just a family cattle producer, and that was through Twitter. And I travelled all across the states through Twitter. I could have done it for 4 times as long as I did. So it's a powerful tool. And I wonder, I guess I look at some of the, such as the Coles issue. I did one a couple of weeks ago on this issue of national parks and the way they're mismanaged. And it is, when you can get a bit of a critical mass happening, it's a really good way of getting your message across. And I really appreciate the feedback and that positivity, because that's what we try to do. And it's often really tempting to go down these rabbit holes and start narking at people and get into these non-constructive sort of discussions. But there is some real merits of being involved, I think, from our industry's point of view.
Can I just follow up quickly to also say to the other people here listening to follow these people on Twitter because of Jack's beautiful singing voice and Adam playing the guitar. I love the guitar player. You have to follow Adam and Jack on Twitter, because it's just beautiful, beautiful singing voice and beautiful.
And see, we don't share any of that on our other ones, but then I've got friends and family who follow on the other ones, and they don't know that we really do a lot of that. So just keep it on Twitter.
So good.
Any other questions?
Comment.
We're going to get off lightly.
No, well, I might.
No.
Sorry, someone else speaking.
Yeah, I've got lots
Nick's
of
going
questions.
for it.
but,
Go on, Nick.
I'm particularly interested in sort of people who sort of are at the forefront of their agricultural careers and like quite successful. A lot of them particularly are very good at picking the trends in agriculture before they kind of happen, or are kind of able to pick those things and make the most of it. And you've sort of spoken about opportunities sort of around the live export ban that you saw. Can you foresee any kind of trends in agriculture that you would sort of think are coming up in the not too distant future?
Right. Yes, you've got a comment there. Like for me, it's I don't think, and it's funny you should say that because we were just talking about. I just had a call before we got on the meeting here from somebody wanting to know about our soil carbon agreement, and it's really weird because people keep coming to us. Someone wanted me to present at a seminar the other day about our soil carbon agreement. We don't really know anything about soil carbon, but we know, the principles of, as I said, the principles of increasing soil carbon and increasing productivity go hand in hand, and that aligns with our vision. So it all comes back to our vision. We say, does this fit with our bigger goals and our bigger picture? And so I think when you're pretty concrete in where you want to, you're concrete in your overall vision, but you're not specific. So we're not really bound to particulars. And when that soil carbon thing came along, we sort of thought, yeah, why not? Not really realising at the time that I think we were one of only 3 in Queensland that sort of were signed up to the soil carbon agreement in this round 1. So I guess in that sense, we're becoming pioneers, and settlers get the arrows sometimes. So time will tell whether it was a good move or not. But I mean, you got to take a risk, don't you? But I don't know that we could really advise on any sort of future trends or anything that's coming out. I think when this whole COVID, when the pandemic sort of took hold, I had a bit of optimism that people might go back to their core beliefs and really figure out what was important to them, i.e., food, shelter, family. But I just don't know that that's happening, sadly. It's certainly created a lot of, different sort of revenue streams. I know for people who are forced into, retail, maybe retailers or producers that are forced into marketing their product differently or delivering it differently. But I think at the end of the day, the focus on environmental credentials and social license in the industry, whether it's methane emissions or biodiversity, ecological outcomes, to me, that's where it's all headed. So anything that's coupled into that, I think we'll have plenty of meeting it in the future.
I think too, generally, just having yourself fully prepared to take opportunities as they arise. So some of the things that have come our way, we weren't necessarily looking for that particular idea or going down that sort of direction, but because we have a general idea of what we want to do, it could be growing sunflowers or it could be growing something completely left field. But if it aligns with basically your values and you touched on being positive about things, we try to remain optimistic all the time and look for opportunities. So if something is going south, well, we say, okay, well, where's the opportunity in this, and is there something that we can kind of make of that? And it's, I can't think whether it might have come about through RCX training, but just being prepared that if something comes along, you don't go, oh, damn it, if I just had my books in order, I could have said to that person, yeah, this is where we're at, and we can take advantage of that. If you're 6 months behind, or you don't have to be perfectly up to date, but if you have a general idea of what your business is doing and where it's headed, then you're a lot more prepared to jump on these opportunities when they come up.
And also thinking while Jack is talking, to not be afraid to do the opposite of what other people are doing. So you look at the cattle market at the moment, record high after record high, and we're probably only carrying half of what we could potentially be. There are other reasons that we're probably not too fussed about that in terms of the redevelopment we've done and just letting our land do its thing. But when everyone's going hard, maybe that's a good time to sit back and watch.
Mm.
So I'm not sure that we really answered your question there.
No, that's really good. I think it's sort of a clear line of what things you need to do to sort of get those trends rather than sort of necessarily what the trends are, but that's probably more important, I think. So that's great.
I'll jump in if no one else is going to go. Hello, everyone. I come a bit late, sorry. That was so inspiring, Adam and Jac. Thank you so much. I'm probably relating to nearly a lot of points that you've made, particularly with RCS. I've just done a farming and grazing for profit school in Wagga and was absolutely mind blown. Massive paradigm shift for me, like just keeping in, I suppose, in the context of what they're teaching, and how it was aligning with the values, and just listening to you talk then, with the opportunities that come. Like, it really is about linking that back to where you're heading, even though you don't think you need it. It's just great advice, everything you're doing. Thanks very much. It's really, really great to listen to you speak.
Thanks, Libby. You know, like the point about, we talked about RCS and you mentioned them there, and that's worked for us, but it's about taking what works for you. You don't have to follow somebody else's mantra to the T. I mean, there's obviously this whole thing around regen farming, and people always come to us and say, "Oh, you're regenerative agriculture," and I say, "I don't really care what you want to call it." There's people, we seem to have to put labels on things, which I think is really weird. And when we put a label on something, it just tends to get other people's backs up.
Or you restrict yourself for the boundaries of what other people perceive that box is. So
you pigeonhole yourself.
So we kind of reject the labels in that sense. And we joke about RCS, we're in the cult. It's like anything you take from it. You send a horse away to be trained. Well, you don't have to do exactly what that one person. There are lots of different ways of doing things, and we've gone to lots of different training things. And you take something from everybody, and sometimes you learn more from the people who aren't doing the right thing than you learn from the people who are. So, there's just learning opportunities everywhere. But just take what works for you. Or I guess you've got to try things that you think won't work before you work out if they are going to work or not. So open mind.
Mm-hmm. It's all right. We'll get unmuted, I'm sure.
I have to start calling out people's names in a minute.
Yeah, that I will. Don't you worry. I'm pretty harsh.
I've got a question. I'm sorry I dropped out before then too. I actually called my husband saying, "Get off Auctions Plus. My internet's gone down. We must have crashed it," but he wasn't. So he said he wasn't, but after I got off the phone, it come back. So he better not have been buying more sheep or something. I just wanted to ask about. So something I don't hear much about with young farmers is how, we obviously work really hard, sometimes off farm careers, sometimes, lots of farm time. How have you coped with juggling with a young family? So that's obviously something that takes up more time than any of us sort of realise. How do you deal with that? Have you got any tips on juggling kids and farming?
I guess for me, it gave me probably more time to be at home, forced time to do office work. And because we had one at school age, by the time we moved here, he'd done School of the Air with that out of Catherine. I was pretty happy to hand him over to a classroom when he came down here. But I still had one at home, and I think it's just not putting too much pressure on yourself. Like we feel like in the corporate ag and we treated those places like they were our own anyway. So you work really hard, and then you come home and then you work hard again on your paperwork or whatever it is. But I think we've learnt to slow down in the last 12 months. We're not that great at it, but we're getting better. We enrolled the kids in nippers because we were close enough to the coast without crocodiles for once that we could actually have the kids do something that was, and it's a sport that made us, we had to go to the beach every Sunday for the summer.
You had to go to the beach.
It was a forced.
Pretty nice beach.
Yeah.
Better than watching cricket or netball or soccer or.
Yeah.
So it was it kind of opened our eyes a little bit that we needed to be doing this a lot more. And you know, you can't get off farm because you don't have anyone to look after everything and all the other animals that need feeding. But just taking those little moments, and we try and make sure we just go for the little drive or whatever it may be to try and, you know, just try and break it up a little bit.
Yep.
But you know, we're not very good at it at times, no doubt about that. And it is a compromise. But then I think the opportunity that we're missing all this is that, you know, our boys are growing up on it. 2,500 hectares. This is a beautiful country. You guys are beautiful places, and we make it a real priority to involve our boys in our business. So we talk about, you know, we're very open with financial aspects. When we're out in the paddock, we'll be, you know, I go crazy out the grass and plants and things, and they sort of look at me like I'm a bit weird, but they don't. They're on board. I know they are. But you know, what an opportunity! And our boys got to grow up not realising how lucky they are. I've got a twin brother in Hampton in Melbourne there who, you know, they've got a little box unit that costs the same amount for 6,000 acres or whatever it is. So, you know, those boys, if we had our boys in that environment, man, they set it on a fire or something. But that's the opportunity for us is to probably not view it as being a compromise. Yeah, you got to get off the farm, but we are really lucky to do what we do, and that's there's never been more apparent than it is now. You have all these people locked up in cities, and yeah, it pays to remember that.
And they're young too. They're 7 and 10, so you know, we talk to them about things that probably are fairly early on, and they don't have to understand everything, but they're involved in all decisions, and yeah, it sort of just keep them in the loop, I guess, of what we're doing. And our kids, it's funny, the neighbours' grandchildren, they come out to the farm and they put their hats on, their belt buckles and their jeans and their boots, and they get dressed up and they love it. And our kids have to be forced to wear shoes and jeans. And, you know, as soon as we're back home, their straight clothes are off and they're back in board shorts and t-shirts. So they're not typical farm kids. They don't want to ride horses. You know, they're not really interested in any of that, but it'll all come. If it's what they want to do, they will, and if it's not, well, they'll do something else. But the knowledge that comes along with it, they're learning about for us, and they're learning about why we do things. And, I guess we try and make that side of it interesting. They're not always interested.
And more importantly, they're pulling up their teachers at school when they start going on about cows ruining the plant. They say,
Very good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if you said it before or not, Adam. What year did you buy your current property?
2016.
Yeah,
2016. Okay. And what, like, feel free not to answer this, but what are your long-term prospects? You're keen to stay where you are, or move back south, or what are your plans, I suppose?
Well, yeah, you've got the fact that we're probably pretty flexible by now, and I think that continues. We don't really, I guess, because we've lived and worked all over the country, we're not really wedded to any particular area. You know, we almost ended up 100k west of Longreach on this the deal where, you know, we went to contract stage and it fell over, and it was funny at the time because people said, you know, when I was in Ireland on the bloody whiskey, drowning my sorrows. I said to Jack later, I said, if one more person says to me everything happens for a reason, you know, I'm gonna dog them. But it's true. It's true. Like, I do believe that you create your own sort of destiny in a lot of ways. But there is an element of fate in all of this, and we sort of, yeah. So we bought the place in 2016. We've seen, obviously, it was very rundown property. We put a lot of work in, but the capital increased with the market. And that's obviously also recognising our improvements, which nowhere near what the capital increase has been. It's fantastic. You know, we're millionaires on paper. Happy days. And yet we still struggle to put cash together and pay interest from quarter to quarter. And certainly now we look at this market, as I said, we've got record cattle prices, the land prices have gone the same way. So it's really hard to know. I mean, yeah, on paper we could sell up, we could cash in, but then what? And we've got to reinvest that money, obviously, otherwise we lose half of the capital gain. So I think we're in a bit of, I don't know how you guys feel down there, I'd be interested in your comments, but I feel like we're in a little bit of a unique time where all our commodity prices are through the roof, land prices are through the roof, and it's hard for me personally because I get itchy feet, like I always sort of looking for the next opportunity. I think this is actually the time where we need to do the opposite and just cool our jets and see what's going to come out of all this. You know, the bigger economic picture. I'm not a doomer and gloomer, but it is pretty horrific stuff. Seems to come out the back of this pandemic, so we might be in uncharted territory.
I think too, when we moved down here, we realised the dream that 10 years earlier than we actually thought it would happen. So we didn't sort of expect to have our own place at this point in time. And early days when we thought about what we really wanted, we thought it was as simple as we wanted a cattle place near the coast because we like the ocean. So that's all it came down to. That's all we said we wanted. And it wasn't until we did RCS and they made us write it down and say, you know, actually figure it out a bit more structured. That was as simple as it was. And for whatever reason, it all seemed to fall, like it wasn't without its challenges, and there's a lot more, you know, ups and downs and things along the way. But we got here and then we realised we had all of a sudden we thought, well, hang on, this is a cattle property near the coast. But then it was then what? We hadn't thought past that because that was, so we kind of, we hit a bit of a wall, I think, when we got here and you know, we were excited, but we didn't stop to celebrate the fact that we'd actually achieved it. We just landed and then was like, Christ, we've bought it and now we've got to keep it. So we've got to make some money and you just hit the ground and start running. So I guess it was pointed out to us along that train that you've got to stop and recognise your achievements and celebrate those. So then you've got the energy to then keep going. And we probably struggled to then write the vision because we just achieved part of the vision and we weren't sure where to from there. So yeah, I think now we're trying to knuckle down and you know, basically improve this place to the best it can be, and we'd love to buy more land and do the same with that. But just, yeah, like Adam said, given the current climate, we're just sitting and waiting. And I mean, I think we're all in the best industry possible the way with everything that's going. We're finally all in the perfect industry. So you know, it's a great place to be, but we're just sort of sitting and waiting to see what the opportunities are going to be out of this whole drama that the world's in at the moment.
I have another one. I just speaking on your experiences with banks, obviously everybody has a really hard time with them, but you mentioned using a broker a few times in your conversation. So what exactly is it that they can give you? What a competitive edge over going to CBA or Rabo or ANZ?
Yeah, so it's a good question. When we were looking at the deal on the place at Longreach, it was essentially, and I don't know that you've been touched on this, they were offering us the place at 50% of its last valuation value, and you sort of go, wow, that's an incredible deal, which it was. You know, walk in, walk out. There was even a bloody aeroplane there, but not that I could fly. But you know, it was amazing that so this was a legitimate deal. They wanted out. The kids, as Jack said, had moved on, so there was genuine reason for them wanting to do what they did. But we could not get a bank across the line. Now, I know a lot of landholders don't sit on 50% equity. You know, it's a pretty 50 or better. We're going all right. And here we were with the opportunity to do it from day one. But the banks kept saying, no, well, if that's what you're buying for, that's what the place is worth. So we got another valuation done. Well, on the whole, it came out at double what we were paying for it. And we still couldn't get anyone online because they said that, you know, bloody banks, I was quite positive about banks before, but I've certainly got my negativities around them too. But so we went to this guy called Brad Sewell, who was a broker for, I forget, was it Sewell? And I forget. Anyway, he was based in New South Wales, but we went to him and said, look, we're having all these battles. This is the deal of the century for us, and why can't we get these bastards online? And he looked at what, you know, obviously I went to Mark Solomon, I'm pretty well across the spreadsheet and an application. And he said, what is all this? He said, I don't take this the wrong way, but this is the most impressive and overcomplicated proposal I've ever seen in my life. So he said, just dumb it down. He said, you need a quarter of what you're telling them. And that was probably the best. You know, he'd been in the industry for his whole life, and he knew what they needed to see and what they didn't need to see. And I looked at his proposal and thought, well, anyone could get that. But it was perfect, and it ticked all boxes. So I guess he just brought that industry knowledge, the banking sector knowledge, which we didn't have, which was pretty powerful. But I think the brokerage rules have changed since then, in the sense that he could get a pretty big fat commission out of it. So he was working pretty hard for the deal. Like, someone else might know more about that, but I believe that the whole structure's changed since then. But it's just an example of what Jack said earlier about getting help when you need it, and finding the right type of help. Because we were across production models and budgets and that sort of thing that we didn't know what to tell them.
Well, the guy from Rabo didn't understand the spreadsheet, so he, yeah.
So it was, a good example of getting the right help. Does that answer your question? I can't remember what the question was now.
Oh, but while we're on banking, there is that side of information. But once you've got your relationship established, we've got a fantastic bank manager now, and she knows the insides and outs. So we send her the budget, but if something's going to change, or at times where we've had to sell earlier because of our rainfall, we've got grazing charts and whatnot, spreadsheets, and where we could foresee that we were going to have to sell out of animals that we were originally going to keep. Well, I just let her know that that's happening, that's coming up, and this is going wrong. None of that's working. We're going to change this. We're going to do that. So, or
on the flip side, things are good, and your bank manager just falls over and you ring them up just for a chat, just talk about how things are on track. So that it's that communication.
It's the communication for the good, the bad, and the ugly leaves. And we don't ring her weekly and annoy her or anything like that. But she is across what we're doing, and when things are going well, we give her a ring and we say, hey, this is going well. We got some rain or whatever else. And when they're going badly, she knows all of that in advance. And it's not a surprise, I guess, is the thing. So I've rung before and said, oh gosh, this is all going wrong, and the budget's not going to look like it should. And she said, oh, don't worry. She said, you've got a budget. You're already ahead. Don't worry about it. So, she already knew the ins and outs. She knew what our plan was, and she could see from the market that we weren't going to do that anyway. So, it gets them in your corner. Then once you've got that relationship, once you're in, then they know what you're thinking in terms of where you're going strategically.
No, that's great. I'm at the early stages, I guess. I'm building up my herd, and I've got them spread out everywhere in the high country on adjustment. And struggling with the banks, and just about to start the RIC process. And it's really hard to lose faith in them, but it's nice to hear that there's other people out there succeeding, because sometimes you look around and just go, oh, just don't know what to do.
And I think it's about getting those runs on the board, isn't it? People always said to us, oh, look, you just got to get your first property purchase signed off, or some significant cattle investment or whatever, and then they'll pay attention and you'll be bankable. And it is true. It is true. And it's
frustrating.
It's frustrating. It's true. And, yes, we have a very good relationship with our banker, but we've hit it pretty hard between the eyes at times and said, look, we want to trim up in our margin. And, she gave us 1.5 point, I think, trim up in our margin, because we went and asked for it. And she said that was the biggest single trim up she'd ever seen. But again, it came back to our financial literacy and the relationship we developed with her. But keep chipping away, because it's I think it's just about runs on the board. The more you get, the better you can communicate what you want to do, the more bankable you become.
You're obviously really across everything that's happening in your business, like in that business sense. What would you like? Is everything that you do on spreadsheets, or do you use different programs to help you out, or how do you sort of set all that up to make sure you are across everything?
Talk to the auditor.
Yeah. Comes from my auditing background, I guess. Adam's a bit more lax, I guess, on that side of it. Spreadsheets mostly. We have looked at different stock recording systems and things like that. We are very, very cash poor. So at the moment, I can't justify getting a system in like that. So we have a true test head, and we scan everything else, but basically just goes in the spreadsheet. We have a grazing chart or paper, but I do it all on the computer, and then I go back once every 2 or 3 months and I draw it all on until I've got my chart filled in. But it's ultimately a version of it is filled in on screen. So, and then banking, we use Xero, which is a lot easier. So quite like that from that side of it.
I use Xero. I love Xero.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing it without something like that.
Oh yeah, accounting packages, you've got to have one, because then
Yeah.
you know, everything's easy at the end of the year. And just make sure everything's up to date in terms of like, you know, we're constant quarterly. I'm never more than a couple of weeks behind banking wise.
Yeah.
But that's purely because we're so tight on our ship at the moment. You know, you've got to know at what point your overdraft is looking too far into the red, and when you've actually got to do something about it. So we literally go from point to point on those. We say, okay, September's our next deadline of something that has to happen, and we just work towards that one. That's where we're at the moment. Unfortunately, we've had 3 years of drought, which wasn't great, running our own property. So we've had to nearly halve our stocking rate at the moment. So that's probably hurt the most, I guess, on that. But if you're watching it, then you know when a crash is coming.
And I think too, you've really got to pick and choose. You know, that I'm a bit critical of some of these ag tech outfits, and they're pushing products at you that look really fancy. And I'm sure, I'm not a tech head, but I think by nurture, the longer we go on, the more we are integrating some sort of technology and systems into our business. But I am a little bit wary of some of the subscription-based fees that they're targeting an industry that's cash poor with subscription fees, and you're adding line items to your overheads all the time. So there's nothing like, I mean, we go back to a basic handwritten grazing chart, and it really cements what you're doing and why you're doing it. So yeah, that's just me. I think you just got to be careful about throwing money into a fancy new bit of software that's in the hope that it's going to solve all your problems.
Yeah.
And I think on the info recording, like, you might not have the perfect spreadsheet, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And if you're not, like when we did RCS, grazing charts were just, I have no idea what I'm talking about. But I just recorded all the bits of information that I would need. So we didn't have names for our paddocks, and I didn't know how big half of them were when we first got here. So, but I thought we knew we'd figure all that out. So I just wrote down like dates of stock moves, how many numbers, that sort of information. And so at least I actually went back and I could complete 2 years of grazing charts in the past from the information that I had just.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
Yeah, so even though you might not be prepared to do that right at that time, so you can look back and be able to benchmark where you're at, just keeping that sort of information somewhere.
Yeah, okay. And then with your budgets, so they're spreadsheets, and then you just like monthly readjust. So you're a bit over on something, a bit under on something, and then you readjust. Do you constantly, I've started doing that. I'm trying this financial year to do that, like the constantly just readjusting your budget instead of having a budget. And then you're sort of so far different. By the time you hit sort of October, you're like 3 hands in the air, and then don't worry about it. Set a new one for the bank next year, but not really actively use it. So do you do that kind of constant work on your budget?
So for the first 12 to 24 months, I had my budget, and then I just had a column. Once April was finished, I'd have April actuals, and I had them next to the budget. And then at the end of the year, we could go back and see how far out we were on everything and adjust it for the following year. And we've just sort of been getting a bit better at that as we go. But, you know, then we do things like we budget to have trade cattle, and then we sold out of our trade cattle, and the price was just stupid to get back in again. So we decided we switched everything up and just bought cows and calves instead. So you've got to be prepared to flow with that sort of stuff.
And a lot of you guys, I'd imagine, would be in the same boat. You know, when your business is in the growth phase, it's very hard to do consistent budgeting. So all you can do is do your best, keep making your actuals to budget, and then readdress. And then the more the years go on, the better you get at it, and the more realistic figures you have.
Yeah, definitely. And look, we're trying to kind of do so if you do overspend 1 month, it means the next month you have to really try and rein everything in, instead of going, oh, I did really well this month because I stuck to the budget, but the previous month you'd kind of blown out. Like, we're trying to catch up. It's not, it's really difficult. And a lot more work going into the business side of the business at the moment. So so we just we have our one budget meeting, and we set our budget for the months, and then each month I just whack the actuals into a column next to it. And then at the end of the month, when we do our next, at the end of the year, when we do our next year's one, we just look how far out we are
and roughly what we're looking to spend the next year, and we go from
Yeah.
there. So we're not strict at all.
One of the biggest take homes out of the RCS process for me was that, obviously financial literacy and business management is a big part of what they teach. But it was this, that if anyone's done a grazing for profit or anything with them, they talk about working in the business and working on the business. And the working in the business is the straightening the fence, is the,
Spraying weeds and doing all
whatever,
the things you want to
the
do.
day-to-day things, and then working on the business, the strategic stuff. And they give some really good examples about, you've been out there busting your ass all day for what, I don't know what you pay a day labor down there, $400 or $500, whatever. So essentially that's what that's worth for your business. But if you spent that time in the office, you might have made $100,000 decision. And that was a really big takeaway for me.
Yeah. And this RCS course, what is that? I hadn't heard of it before.
Grazing for profit, they've been running for many years. They've got lots of different courses now, but grazing for profit is a big one. But again, it's it's for some people, it's not for others. I've never spoken to anybody that's done that. Very much worthwhile.
We can probably follow up and pop the link in to that, Natasha, in the chat.
That'd be great
if you like. So just with a few minutes to go, I was wondering if you'd like to maybe share one of your mentoring, maybe a highlight and a challenge, and how you've overcome them, Adam and Jac, if you've got a minute to do that, just so we can round out the conversation.
And I've forgotten we were going to talk about that. So I've sort of forgotten what I was going to say.
All right.
But as I said, I'm probably have a bit of a rebellious nature, for want of a better word. I was a bit of a shithead in school, and I always think that I would do the opposite of what other people are doing, for better or worse. But so in a lot of ways, I kind of early on, I probably rejected the idea of mentoring. Going, well, I know what I'm doing. What do I need someone else to help? And that's simplifying. But I was coupled with a guy, Philip Hughes, who was a producer from Gilacus, who was further south from us, and him and I were quite alike in that we were big picture thinkers. So this is in that Beef Australia mentoring program in 2016, 16. And to me, as I say, I've probably learnt more. I learned a hell of a lot from Philip, and the relationship we developed out of that program has continued now. I speak to him every week or two. So that's how powerful these things can be. Poor bugger, we just don't leave them alone. But it's the ability for me, it's the ability for somebody to really put pressure on you, to hit you at the right pressure point and say, if I think about some of the things I've done, thinking he was going to say A and he says B, and it was completely the opposite advice that I thought I was going there to seek. And it's all about personalities, right? So coupling a mentee with a mentor is no small feat. And we've had every year, well, the last 3 times we've done this program, there have been a couple of partnerships that didn't work out, but credit to Barb Bishop, who facilitates the program. She has a unique skill in putting people together, so it's been quite successful. So this time I'm actually co-mentoring because we're sort of fresh mentors. I'm co-mentoring with another guy on the program, and we're co-mentoring a young girl from the feedlot industry. And I didn't know how it was going to work, but it's all about people's personalities, right? So Ash Kirk, who's the other mentor, my co-mentor, he's a very straight down the line, analytical sort of thinker, the complete opposite to me. And I forget what my wigs would have been, but they were miles apart. And so it's become a really interesting exercise for me in that Caitlin can get two very different opinions from either of us when she comes to us with the same question, and that's going to be that's going to be different with every relationship. But it's I think it's recognizing where your strengths and weaknesses lie, and then a critical part of any mentoring relationship is not being afraid to be a little bit vulnerable and open up, because, and I've seen it this year in our mentoring partners, as mentors, we obviously catch up in a group and we say, oh, we're so close, but he just won't open up, or she won't open up. And if you're in a position of being mentored, you need to, one, recognise that it is a pretty special position to be in. You've been chosen to be part of a program, so pat yourself on the back for that, but don't take it for granted. It's such a wonderful opportunity. And so when you're communicating with your mentor, give them everything, you know, hit them hard. That's what they're there for. Don't leave anything on the table, or get it all on the table.
Wow. Look out mentors, their next session, Adam. I don't know what they might say. Who have you been talking to? What's happened?
Sorry. Have you got anyone got any more specific questions about? I mean, I'm interested. I'd love to stay on all day and talk to you guys about how all your sort of your mentoring journeys are going. But
do you have projects in this? Are you doing a specific project, or is it just mentoring how you're going, generally speaking? Yeah.
So they're meant to be
general mentoring.
In theory, they're meant to be setting up with a bit of a goal at the start of the program, what they want to work on, and then have used their mentor to work that through. My understanding is that what was thought about at the start may not necessarily be what we're working on now, because you know the relationships evolved, and what was a problem at the start of the year is not relevant now, and you know different themes are being worked on. So yeah, there's no sort of project as such. It's just working through an issue that's relevant and important.
And that's probably a point I wanted to make, is that not to focus on the project if there was a project or an end goal, but if it deviates and that's not even in the picture anymore, it's not a bad thing. And I mean, obviously I know Adam's partner in this process, and she would come along with a very specific goal in mind, but then Adam would say, yeah, what have you been doing on the weekend? Like, what have you been up to? What have you been doing? And just getting that just on a personal level, just working that side of the relationship out, and then the other stuff will come. The project will sort itself out, or it won't, or however that will work. But that's not really what you get out of all of this. You know, it's more about just that connection, and then it all builds from there. Once you've got that foundation of a relationship, then everything else will really, so you get more out of it that way.
Yeah, it's about the journey, and credit to all of you who are obviously trying to do this by Zoom.
Yeah,
and it's without face-to-face contact. And Sarah and Jamie, you've obviously done a great job of facilitating this, because it's not easy. And I'd say to all the mentees, just stick with it. And it's a really hard thing to build a relationship over a phone or staring at each other into the computer. But stick with it. Give it all the energy you can, and hopefully we'll come out the other end of this and you will develop a relationship that is pretty special and meaningful.
Yeah, super. All right, well, I think we have absolutely smashed out that 90 minutes of lunchtime. So has anyone got any last words before we thank Adam and Jac for their time today? No. Oh, well done. Well, Gemma?
Only to say thanks very much. And, you know, I'm not on farm. I am, you know, a public servant, you know, trying my best to do what I can for these guys. I mean, I did grow up in a regional town, but certainly don't understand the practicalities and the challenges that you face day to day. But so it's really great just to hear from everybody about, you know, all the different things that they're considering, and what are, you know, things that you have to think about on a daily basis, and what some of the bigger picture things are. But I just wanted to say, I guess, my takeaway, you know, as somebody who's not on farm, from your vision at the start, was that it was very much about, I guess, the consequences of, you know, the decisions that you make, and how that brings happiness and you know, kind of, I guess, support and comfort to your family and you know, and your lives and who you are. Because I think that's a nice, you know, then it gives you flexibility within your decision making, doesn't it? That's your vision. Your vision is not to have a certain property of a certain size, or have X number of head, or have a date or a time on it. And it gives you that ability to be flexible, then to make the decisions to reach the bigger goals of just, you know, having a having a good old crack at stuff and having a good life. So anyway, that was I think, because I think that's so applicable to you know, things that everybody does in every parts of their life. So thank you. That was a nice learning for me as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, thanks for the opportunity. And you know, I'm sure we're both more than happy for you to share our contact details of the group should we be able to help anyone else out in any way. I hope that everyone's got something out of today. We didn't ramble too much, but I'm pretty excited. This is probably the first time we've been asked to sort of speak to people, you know, in a program like this, and yeah, I was pretty excited. And as I said before, good on everyone for putting your hat in the ring and having a go and stick to it, and you're the future, for all the future. So it's awesome. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everyone. We will wrap that up there. But yeah, I'm sure you'll have some new followers, Adam. So I'm looking forward to
Thanks,
hearing
Jamie.
this singing. Bit of singing will be lovely. But yeah, thank you very, very much for your time. We really appreciate it. You know, we all learned something. We've got some learnings in the chat here. So yeah, everyone's taken something away. Which is great. So
Excellent.
Thanks again. We will be in touch, everyone. Good luck with the rest of the day and the week ahead.